It's funny how Moses oftentimes focuses on his own inadequacies. And how many times do we focus on our own inadequacies? We focus on what our problem is. But God says, don't focus on that. Learn the assignment. What's the saying? He didn't understand the assignment. Is the assignment is here's what I've called you to do. It's not about what you can't do. It's about what I can do. And I think we need to be reminded of that as the people of God, as we do the work of God, that it's not about what our inadequacies are, because there are plenty. There are plenty that we can always look to. There's always a reason why I can't do this. And there's always a reason why this person won't listen to me. There's always a reason why whatever, fill in the blank. But it's always about God's power. And it's always about God's work. We need to stay focused on that. That's my drosh, my spiel from this week's parashah, from the Torah portion. And so I just want us to be encouraged in that. But as I said today, we're going to begin. We were going to start last week. We had Daniel VA, and that was wonderful hearing him. And I love his connection from John 3:16 back to next week's Torah, or the couple of weeks Torah portion with the giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai. Really beautiful. So we heard from him last week. But today we're going to be starting a new journey in the book of Galatians, the book of Galatians. All right. So one of these pinch hit major books. Particularly as a lot of people in the Messianic Jewish movement maybe struggle with various points. If there's any book that maybe if you have gotten excited about Messianic Judaism, if you've gotten excited about the Torah, if you've gotten excited about Shabbat and various elements of things, and we're like, wait a minute, these are things that we've been missing, and these are things that the church kind of drifted away from, and man, this is so beautiful, and man, God calling Jewish people and worshiping, and what's oftentimes the text that your Christian friend is going to quote to you. They're going to go back to the book of Galatians, right? We're going to school you 101, and we're going to fix you and get you right? And I think that a lot of people in the Messianic Jewish movement tend to kind of sidestep Galatians because of that, because it's a difficult text for many to reconcile. But I think it's good that we go through the book of Galatians. I'm not going to cover every single verse of Galatians, but we're going to go through it chapter by chapter, and we're going to pull out some of the highlights and the major points over the next 7 weeks. And as I thought about what should I title this, if I were going to give this a sermon series title, it'd be Priorities. What are Messianic Jewish priorities? And I think the book of Galatians is really important about getting to the issue of what our priorities need to be in a Messianic Jewish context. And spoiler alert, Messianic Jewish priorities are also the same as traditional Christian church. Now, wait a minute, Phillip, why do we even worship in this context? Well, those are all things that we can examine and look at as we go throughout the text of Galatians. But the book of Galatians setting is around 49 AD, 50 AD. Scholars, some debate that. Some say no. It depends upon when you go back, and we're going to be looking and journeying back. In fact, we're going to start off in Acts today. I'm going to look at a couple of verses there, because we need to go back and we need to get the context for what sets the backdrop for the book of Galatians. And first of all, if Sam would just pull up a map. I've got a map for us. We're going to go to seminary, okay? Sorry, we're going to go to seminary. You're going to a seminary, and so right here, if you look at this area would be, you see that right in the middle, Galatia. And this would be considered the area of Galatia. Okay, now, many scholars say, well, the northern region up here of this part, that was Galatia proper. And so Paul never went to that until much later. And so some people would date the book of Galatians much later, like around maybe the late 50s, right around the time that he wrote the book of Romans. By the way, Romans is oftentimes considered the sister or the twin book to Galatians, because they both address very similar issues. But if you go back to Acts 13 and 14, it's this southern region. These are the areas that Paul went and visited. And I would vie for that and say that Galatians was written sometime. We know, or I say we know, we can be pretty sure that it was written before Acts 15, or that it was written before the issue of the First Jerusalem Council. Anybody remember the Jerusalem Council? What's going on there? Yeah. So this is the region of Galatia. And in Acts 13 and 14, Paul is visiting this southern region on his first missionary journey with Barnabas. And we read about that last year as we were going through the book of Acts. And there's an issue that pops up. And it's something that and Rav Shaul is going about, and he's proclaiming the good news of Yeshua. In fact, we're going to get a bit of a backdrop on Rav Shaul, the Apostle Paul's life. But if you would turn with me, if you would, to Acts 15. Ma'aseh Shalachim, Acts 15. What's the backdrop for some of the issues of Galatians? If one of the reasons why scholars think that that the book of Galatians was written sometime before the First Jerusalem Council is because, for one thing, Paul never seems to allude to the ruling that was ruled and decided upon in Acts chapter 15. He never refers to that in the book of Galatians. And many liberal scholars today say, well, Galatians was written much later. It's something that developed, and Paul kind of was trying to hash out and develop his theology. And it's not until much later that Paul came to some of the conclusions that he came to in the book of Galatians. But I think that that's a false narrative. And if we understand that Paul is possibly writing his letter around 49 AD, we're talking about how long is that separated from Yeshua's crucifixion and resurrection?